Hello guys, welcome back, and today I'm going to be talking about Guy Boucher and him getting fired by the Ottawa Senators. Now, Ottawa has fired their head coach Guy Boucher and has replaced him with Marc Crawford. But why did they do this, and is it a smart move? Watch till the end to find out. Now, with 18 games to go in the Ottawa Senators season, Guy Boucher has been fired by the Ottawa Senators in a pretty disappointing but not surprising move. Now, Guy Boucher has been the coach of the team for 3 seasons, getting hired on a 3-year contract back in the 2016-2017 season, and that season was so successful for them. The Ottawa Senators in that season going to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pittsburgh Penguins in an amazing 7-game series, and were 1 goal away from facing the Nashville Predators in the Stanley Cup Final. So Guy Boucher definitely did his job, and the future at that point was looking pretty bright. Now, that 2016-2017 season was just a magical one for the Ottawa Senators. There were a ton of amazing stories and amazing players to root for. Craig Anderson having his wife have cancer, and that whole situation that just fueled Craig Anderson to play as well as he did. Erik Karlsson having, I think that was an ankle injury, and he was still playing amazing in the playoffs. There was comeback stories like Clark MacArthur. There were some fantastic stories and some great players on that team, and Guy Boucher was the guy in charge of it, and really was the guy, I think, that led them to the Eastern Conference Final. And when we look back at that season for the Ottawa Senators, especially in the playoffs, they weren't the most fun team to watch, but they got the job done when they needed to. They got clutch goals, they got clutch goaltending, and that's how they made it so far in the playoffs that year. They really did not have all too great of a roster. They had some amazing players, of course, like Erik Karlsson, Kyle Turris, Mike Hoffman, but they weren't this amazing team, this amazing juggernaut team that was a favorite to go that far. They were a decent team at that time, but I don't think anybody expected them to have the magical run that they did. And while they didn't make the Stanley Cup Finals, they were still a very solid team that banded together, and a lot of that has to give credit to Guy Boucher for putting that team together back then. But since that 2016-2017 season, and since the Game 7 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins, the magic has totally worn off for the Ottawa Senators. The team has pretty much been dismantled since that point. I think there's only 6 players left on the team right now that were on that 2017 team, and it's not even 2 years later. So Guy Boucher still was the coach at this point, still was coaching the worst team in the league. It wasn't a good look for him, but it's not like he was given many chances and many opportunities. But Guy Boucher was always given pennies on the dollar. He was always given just mad team after mad team, and while he pretty much made that mad team in 2017 into an Eastern Conference Final team, that still was not the greatest roster up to that point, and they had to play a lot of trap game. They had to get a lot of clutch goals at clutch times to be able to win that many games in the playoffs. And since then, the magic has worn off. The trap game has not worked for the Ottawa Senators, and they've just been floundering as a franchise overall. And since Eugene Melnyk has pretty much torn that franchise apart and torn that team apart since 2017, again, just the unfairness on Guy Boucher's side is kind of just sad, because he had a pretty solid roster that he was able to make into a great playoff team back in 2017, but he wasn't able to do anything with the last couple of rosters that Ottawa has handed him. He is a very good coach, a very solid coach that can transform mad teams into great ones. But this Ottawa Senators team, both this year and last year, couldn't do anything worth of note, and while they did have some great players like Mark Stone, Matt Duchene, they just did not have anything down on the depth, and especially not on the defense. So to say that Guy Boucher was handed an unfair hand is a very big understatement, because he turned that 2017 team into a great one, but the last couple of years, you can't really blame it on him. You gotta blame it on the management for training guys like Erik Karlsson, training guys like Mark Stone and Matt Duchene, and even when those guys were on those teams, it's not like there was much else anyways. There was pretty much no depth, almost 0 youthful players that were really playing well, at least last season, and it was just a disaster of a franchise, even trading their first round pick, which would like to be the first overall pick in this year. But you can't blame that on Guy Boucher. That's the management's decision, but when it comes to Guy Boucher, he was given what he was, and he couldn't do too much with it, which I don't think any coach could transform the Ottawa Senators of this year or last into a good team, and Guy Boucher certainly couldn't. Now, when it comes to who will replace Guy Boucher, Marc Crawford, who was one of the assistant coaches of that Ottawa Senators team, will be the interim head coach. Now, he came in on the Ottawa Senators staff pretty much the same time as Guy Boucher, so they do have a strong bond, or at least they did, but Marc Crawford will assume all the duties, at least for this season. Now, Marc Crawford has been around the NHL for the last 2 decades. He ended up winning the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche back in 1996, I think as an assistant coach, but since then he's been on multiple teams. He was with the NLA ZSZ Lions, who had Austin Matthews. He was there for like 3 years and ended up winning a couple of championships with them, and ended up joining the Ottawa Senators at the same time as Guy Boucher, ended up going on that 2017 run. So I think he has some good qualities, and I think he will be a decent replacement for Guy Boucher. Now, what makes this whole situation funny is that Pierre Dorion actually said that the whole decisions on Guy Boucher and that management staff would be handled after this season. He said in an Ottawa Sun article or interview, he said a decision on head coach Guy Boucher and his staff, who are in the final year of their contracts, won't be made until the off-season. Guy's job hasn't been easy in the last few weeks with everything going on, and I think he's handled it well. We're going to evaluate them at the end of the year. And obviously with those quotes, they didn't become true. Now, for an NHL GM to change minds and to change decisions, that's not really uncommon. That's pretty commonplace with NHL GMs. But what makes this really, really funny is that Pierre Dorion actually said this 24 hours before he actually fired Guy Boucher. So when it came to this whole situation, he changed his mind very fast in this and might have been a little bit hasty, but he said he was going to wait until after the offseason, and only 24 hours later, he ends up firing Guy Boucher. So not really a good look, and a very bad quote on his end. Now, Frank Cervelli also had a pretty interesting tweet talking about what Pierre Dorion said after this whole situation, and Pierre Dorion ended up having a couple of juicy quotes. Now, Pierre Dorion said this: "I told them that our play recently wasn't acceptable. No more excuses." So he went into the locker room, in that Ottawa Senators locker room, and basically just nailed on them, just went ham. And after this Guy Boucher firing, you might as well, but it's not like the Ottawa Senators are that great of a team anyways. But firing Guy Boucher is just a decision that I personally would never make. For the Ottawa Senators, again, back in 2017, he had that magical run, but I feel like for a rebuild, Guy Boucher is actually a pretty solid coach. Now, Pierre Dorion said it himself. He said that Guy Boucher has handled it well. He has been calm and patient with the Ottawa Senators team. But when it comes to Guy Boucher, he has already had a track record of developing some decent guys while on the Ottawa Senators. And again, just this year and last year, you had Thomas Chabot. This year, you had Tkachuk. Those are solid players that Guy Boucher has handled himself and has given them the minutes to really succeed. But when it goes to other coaches, I think Marc Crawford is a smart guy. I think he will be decent. But Guy Boucher has already proven that he can develop some of the younger guys, and that's what Ottawa wants right now. They want those young guys to transition and to play and get that ice time, and Guy Boucher is willing to give that up, willing to give those rookies the ice time, which I think is huge. And Marc Crawford, I don't think that's a sure bet right now. Guy Boucher had 1 year left on this deal, was probably going to walk unless Ottawa gave him a lot of money, and we know Eugene Melnyk does not want to do that in any scenario. So calling up and promoting Marc Crawford here does make sense. He probably won't ask for too much anyways, too much money or too much time, but it does make sense for the Ottawa Senators if they're trying to save money. But again, if you want to have success long term, as I discussed a couple of days ago, you got to invest some money in that team, and Marc Crawford, I think, will be a decent coach, but maybe not what they need. And we just got some news the Senators will also be adding Chris Kelly, a former Sens player, onto that coaching staff, maybe in a smaller role, maybe just as an assistant coach, but he's 38, he'll be a pretty young assistant coach, or at least coach on that team, but I think it is a smart move for them to make. He was back on the 2017 team, he has some experience for sure, and he's a character and chemistry type of guy, so I feel like he'll definitely work on that management team, and hey, I think he's a type of guy that can be a very solid coach, so we'll get a good opportunity, and the Ottawa Senators are willing to give it to him. But going back on Guy Boucher, I do really like him as a coach. I honestly think an NHL team should be lining up to hire a guy like that. But I feel like he's a decent coach in the right situation. And the Ottawa Senators were not in the right situation to give Guy Boucher what he really needed to transform the team into the next level. They had it back in 2017, but not anymore. And Eugene Melnyk also stating before that he doesn't want to pay anybody pretty much. And getting rid of a guy like Guy Boucher does make sense. I think Marc Crawford will be a solid coach for the Ottawa Senators, or at least interim role, and I feel like it will work out for the Ottawa Senators, but firing a guy like Guy Boucher kind of makes me sad and kind of makes me nostalgic of the 2017 team. But good luck to Guy Boucher. Hopefully his career starts to turn after this. Hopefully he finds another job in the NHL after this, because he is a pretty solid coach. And good luck to the Ottawa Senators. Hopefully this move works out for them, because let's be honest, if any team needs some luck right now, it's the Ottawa Senators. I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. So let me know, what do you think about this move by the Ottawa Senators? What do you think about Guy Boucher getting fired from the Ottawa Senators? What do you think about Marc Crawford coming in as head coach? Let me know all your thoughts down below on this entire situation. But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch my video about the Sens rebuild and why it will never work. But that is what for today, guys. If you guys enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on Guy Boucher getting fired and Marc Crawford getting promoted. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.